What's good in the YouTube? This is Crazy Samurai 71 here, bringing you another video. Today I'm bringing you a video on Power Rangers Hyperforce. But before I start, I wanted to say up front, I hope you all had a great New Year celebration this past weekend. I definitely did. I had a great time, and we're starting off the year strong with Power Rangers Hyperforce, which is great. We actually got a great guest star with the most recent episode of the show, which was Jason David Frank, who played Tommy Oliver, who is in more seasons than any other Ranger, pretty much. So it's pretty crazy to think. You know, for those who do not know, he was the he was the original Green Ranger, he was the White Ranger in Mighty Morphin, he was Zeo Red, he was Turbo Red during the first half of the season, he was Dino Thunder Black. So, you know, he's been a bunch, and he's also been in several other seasons, and he's been in every single one of the movies. Even if he's been as a cameo, he's been in it. So again, he's consistently used in every form of media. He's still heavily part of the franchise. So again, it made sense. It was more a question of when rather than if. Because, like, to be honest with you, as far as the chances of him being one of the guest stars, there was no doubt it was going to happen. It was just when it was going to happen. Now, the other thing that many people were wondering was, what season was this going to focus on with him? Because, of course, as I just noted, he's been in several different seasons. He's had more colors than anyone else. He's done a lot. So, which season were they going to focus on? Many people had different theories. People were hoping for maybe Lord Draken. People were hoping for all sorts of different versions of him. The one that they went for was one that I'm actually very happy they went for, and I think made the most sense, because they weren't going to explore Mighty Morphin, because they already did that with Karen. What they decided to do was they went for Dino Thunder, which I think was probably the smartest idea that they probably should have done, because of the fact that it's not it's different enough, and it's just its own story, as opposed to if they went to Zeo or Turbo, which still have a similar feel to MMPR in a way. You know, it doesn't really work as well, as opposed to going to Dino Thunder, where it's much later and it's its own idea. So that's really great, and I actually appreciate that aspect a lot. I do think that this will be very interesting to see. I was really happy to see what they did with it. So I want to talk about that. So as we know, obviously that means that Dr. O was a thing this time around, which I actually liked that a lot. They did some really cool things with the story. For starters, we got to find out what was Jack up to. As we know in the last episode, Jack, who's played by Pauly Schreier, actually the actor Pauly, he actually had some oral surgery on him, so he was not able to show up last episode. So of course they had to explain where was he. They actually created a good explanation, which is great. What they said basically was that they were looking for several weeks to find the other Rangers. They had been missing for quite some time. Initially Jack said it was 3 weeks, then it was said to be 7 weeks. You know, it really wasn't clear, but the whole point was that Alpha 55 looked for the Rangers, and then eventually they found out there was a time anomaly that led Jack to Dr. O, which then led to him Jack and Dr. O eventually finding the Rangers. When they do find him, they are all starstruck. Apparently, they know of him, they've read about him, they've heard about how much of a legend he was as a Ranger. So clearly, his legacy travels far into the future. He is revered, remembered, and everyone knows him from as far forward as possible. And you know, he's gained a real name and a real reputation in the future, which is great to note that they actually acknowledge that whole point. I actually did enjoy that aspect. So what we also find out is, you know, how the Rangers interact with Dr. O. For example, Vesper constantly seems to stare at him, or say things like she can control the ship with her mind, or, you know, different things like that that are a little bit creepy, a little bit messed up, and, you know, he always just kind of responds with all right, you can calm down now kind of personality. You know, he gets it, but he's sort of like, stop the situation without being like aggressive in a way, I guess you could say. So it's interesting. And again, they end up traveling to the year 2005. The reason why they have to go back to his time is because of the fact that Anton Mercer is being attacked, apparently. We actually find out later on that the Alliance is trying to get to him so that they can get Megazord, which is important, and that's really great to note that. What we also end up finding out is that the Time Force Rangers have been taken down, and the thing is that they actually don't even know if any of them are doing it or what's actually happened to the other Time Force Rangers. Now, the question is, does that also include obviously Wes, which we don't know. We also don't know about Eric, but you would imagine at least the ones that were from the future, most likely that's what they're referring to. We don't know about Alex either, so we'll have to wait and see. Following all this, though, we also have it where they end up in Dr. O's lab, where Anton was supposed to be, but what happens is that the place looks terrible, and they were trying to keep him there to prevent him from being captured from the Alliance. So that all happens. Eventually, what follows is they end up confronting Haley. Haley from Haley's Cyber Cafe, who was Dr. O's assistant. So she has gone mad. She's really annoyed. And the thing is that at first Chloe raps, doesn't really do much. Then eventually Dr. O makes Malika rap as Alpha, which is really funny, and everyone just started like beatboxing, and it was really fun to see like Dr. O and everyone else doing it, because it totally felt fun and exciting, and everyone just looked like they were having like a great time. So that did happen. Eventually what does happen following this is they continue to try to calm her down, and she tries to create lots of issues. Eventually Haley even breaks a case that has the Brachiomorpher in it, which is important. And what we also end up finding out is that Chloe manages to get the Brachiomorpher and the Dino Gem. Now, what we have to know, and this is something that's really important that people were wondering, when does this episode actually take place in the show history? And that was a great question. And I thought to myself, before I even watched this episode, when could this take place? Because you have to consider this. Most of the time throughout the season, there was really no time where like he was alone, and he actually had the powers. Like, that's the 2 points to consider. So it couldn't have been at the beginning. And the question is that what do you do then? Well, the only time that actually made sense where the other Rangers weren't there was at the very end. And that's what actually is confirmed later on. This is supposed to happen like literally right after the season ends, which is different because sometimes they go for the early approach like they did with RPM. Well, in this case, they're going for the very beginning, as opposed to MMPR where they went more towards like the middle of the second season. So it's sort of interesting which kind of points in time they jump between with each of these chapters in the story, because there's not necessarily any specific consistency. It's just how they choose to do things, which I actually don't mind it, and I find that pretty interesting how they position things and make things work. I actually like that a lot. So what we do also see is that because it's later on, Dr. O's Dino Gem doesn't work anymore, and he's lost his powers. So the thing is that he can't really help the Rangers too much. What we also find out is that there's this gas that's creating a lot of problems throughout the reef side, and they have to stop it. What they end up doing is they end up going into like the house part of Dr. O's lab, and like everyone has to take off their shoes. They even reference that whole idea, and like Marv has like smelly feet. So there's that whole moment with like them also being disgusted by the smell of his feet and all that. And the thing is that they want to morph and they want to help people, because the thing is that this gas brings out the worst in people and makes them turn evil. So like that, the whole entire point is that they're trying to stop it so that people will revert back to being good. So they do all that. what does happen, and I forgot to mention this up front, later on, is we also find out that, you know, Tommy gets his own card, which character card, which gives you a clue as to what kind of ability he has. And I wanted to say this up front, his ability is that he actually can roll 1 additional dice, which makes a lot of sense because of how powerful he's supposed to be. So it's sort of like, okay, 1 additional dice means that he has the ability to roll 1 extra die, giving him even more potential power when he attacks. Now, we haven't gotten to him actually fighting and everything, but we do also see is that they mention that they pass by like his old costumes from the past seasons. They also go in Dr. O's old Jeep, and eventually they travel to Haley's cyber cafe, where they end up trying to help the civilians, while Eddie actually works on the Black Dino Gem and Brachiomorpher to try to get things fixed. So everything's going on, and eventually they end up actually re-energizing Dr. O's Morpher using each of the Rangers' energy to power it up, only giving him the ability to morph 1 time. So that's the whole point. That really gave away a clearer hint as to when this was. This has to be at the end. This has to be right at the end of the season when he loses his powers, and you know, everyone's gone at this point. And also later on we learn other information, such as the fact that like Anton had lost his ability to become like he still had. They later on say like how he still had some Dino DNA, which kind of also hinted at it. And we'll get into that towards the end. But again, there were lots of hints that basically gave you a clear-cut idea that this was supposed to take place towards the right at the end of the season. So, you know, right as the season ended, that's where they start from. That's interesting. So anyway, they end up doing all this. There's even conversations about like Dr. O talking about Ernie's and how they visited and everything. And people are creating problems. They eventually have to deal with helping out the civilians, and then there's a bunch of putties that attack, so that's when the Rangers have to fight. At first, Marv takes out a bunch of them, and then Vesper and Eddie are turned evil by the gas, which they have gas masks, but like somehow they still manage to get affected, even though Vesper especially shouldn't have been affected at all. But like, them turning evil is temporary, honestly. I mean, at first, like, Marv gets attacked by Eddie, and, like, that's not a good thing, obviously. Which is cool, because it's nice to see, like, not just Vesper turning evil, but Marv as well. Although this is now the 2nd time that Vesper's turned evil, which seems a little bit odd, because she's supposed to be a robot. She's not supposed to be able to receive this kind of virus, because it's not, like, a computer virus. It's like a sewage virus, which is... or sewage gas, which seems a little bit unusual, but I guess somehow it works. Again, they even said that like she shouldn't be affected, but somehow she was. Anyway, all this does happen. Chloe tries to sing to Vesper. Eventually, we end up also seeing the monster for the episode, which is the Perfume Pony. The Perfume Pony is an interesting monster because it does have like flowers and petals on it. So it kind of sounds like a combination of like a monster that we've seen before and one that and an original one, because like the pony aspect, but like the petal aspect is something that we've definitely seen before in like really old seasons. But yeah, Perfume Pony, and you know, this monster creates a lot of problems. We have situations with Dr. O and Jack fighting the putties, and also trying to fight the monster. So all that does happen. They do all sorts of different attacks, and eventually what they end up doing is they actually cover is that each of the Rangers morph, and in the end Dr. O gets to morph, which is really cool. It was great to see Dr. O morph into his Black Dino Thunder Ranger form. So that was great when they did that whole transformation. I loved the transformation a lot. And I think it was just such a great thing that they decided to go for Dino Thunder. I really think that was just such a smart thing. I think a lot of people were really hoping for Dino Thunder, and that was just a perfect choice that made sense, and it wouldn't be something that too many people would be unfamiliar with. It's something that definitely people will know of, because it's a good form, and it's a form that definitely wasn't talked about as much. And again, he had very inconsistent appearances in the show because of how significant he was at the time, and because of his what he did in life at the time. Because, you know, again, at that point in time, he was doing a lot of MMA and a lot of other stuff, so he couldn't just consistently be a part of every episode and really do much other than a voiceover line sometimes. So, you know, that does happen. Eventually the Rangers do lots of team attacks, and they actually do some Kia attacks as well, which is cool to hear. JDF do some Kias, which we haven't heard in quite some time, and that was great. Lots of fun with that. Eventually, they do manage to destroy the monster, but the monster is turned big. At that point, they actually summon the Megazord, which is really cool. I actually love that a lot. That's a neat Megazord. I'm sure some people were kind of hoping for Brachio, but I'm glad that they didn't go for that, because the Mezzodon actually fought well. The Brachio really just kind of carried the Zords. It was mainly just a carrier. So what they end up doing is Marv and Vesper are chosen to join in the Megazord with Dr. O. They end up attacking the Perfume Pony, doing lots of different attacks, while the others have to deal with the civilians, which they end up putting them in a pocket dimension cryogenic freeze situation, which is interesting. And they have to deal with like this little boy named Billy who causes trouble, and then there's his dog and his brother, and just all these other people that are creating all sorts of issues. So it's kind of interesting. Anyway, they have all sorts of different things going on. They even do original attacks, and I forgot to also mention the fact that like they have all sorts of different character cards, and the Mezzodon Megazord is just kind of a cool choice for a Megazord for them to use, and I actually really appreciate it. That they went full out with a Megazord as opposed to in past episodes where they just went for the individual Zord, because again, like that's what they've done in the past. It's typically just been the individual Zords rather than the full-on Megazord. So I actually like that a lot more, that they went directly for that. So continuing on though, they continue to fight. At one point, the Rangers realize that like their Zords are working again, and also Dr. O does like a special move, like a figure for chokehold, and eventually the Rangers end up scanning for Anton. They find him, and they also get the cure found. So then what happens is each of the Rangers summon their Zords, and they're able to do autopilot with their Zords, which they don't really utilize, even though they could, because like in reality, if that were the case, then that means that like Marv and Vesper didn't actually need to like leave the Mezzodon Megazord. They could have actually stayed in there with Dr. O, but for some reason they decided, nope, we're gonna like jump ship and actually go to our Zords. And I don't even think they actually form the Megazord. They just kind of have the Zords available to them, which they end up using them. Eventually, they do different attacks. Eddie actually gets rid of most of the petals on the monster, and then Dr. O uses the goes down from the Mezzodon Megazord and uses like some Earth strikes to actually make the petal, out there, and eventually they end up destroying the monster. Following this, they end up going to find Dr. Anton, who contacts them, and the Rangers have to deal with him, going back and forth between being Anton and Masagog. They also find out about something very important, which is the fact that the Alliance is looking for Zordon because they're trying to change history. What most people are expecting this means is that his intentions might end up being that he's trying to make it so that he's brought back to life, because again, he was destroyed at this point in time. So that's the other thought. What could this lead to? Would he be corrupted? Would this be before in space? Would this be somewhere else? More likely than not, they will go to in space in the future, I would imagine. Because that's where that whole incident happened. So like maybe they would stop Andros or something like that. That would be interesting to see. Again, nothing is clear, nothing is set in stone yet, but it should be very interesting. Again, what they also have to say goodbye to you know, Dr. O, and it's a sad goodbye, but it's nice at the same time. Last thing I wanted to say overall was I like this episode a lot. There's a lot of great things. As far as things go with Jason David Frank as a guest star, he was definitely pretty good. He was probably either the best guest star we've had so far or the second best. I still think that the best, I think that the best two right now have been Karen and Jason David Frank, honestly, in my opinion. Again, everyone has their own opinion, but in my opinion, I would say that those two have been the best. If I had to say so, because if I had to say so, and then like a third one would probably be either, it's hard to really say whether or not I'd put Jen over Jem or not. I think with the episode 1 appearance alone, I would probably kind of lean towards Jem being higher than Jen, because it wasn't that great of an appearance, but I think by the time that the next appearance happens with her, things should be better. I do think that things will improve. Again, the first episode was very rough, so I think that they can do a lot more to improve upon it and make it a really good episode. Again, looking forward to seeing where things go from here. What we do find out at the very end is that they're going after some other incidents happening in Reefside, so we'll see what that actually means. And I'm looking forward to seeing all that in the near future. I love your guys' opinions. Did you guys enjoy this episode? I personally did. Were you happy to see Jason David Frank appear in this episode? Again, very popular actor, someone that maybe people were expecting. Good to see that he started the new year off, and I'm not complaining. It's good that they got him out of the way now, and he was not a bad way to start the year off. And a logical, expected, but good choice, and I appreciate it. And I think that what he did, even though he definitely felt out of place at times, he totally made it work. He totally made it fun. The fireside chat was probably the best fireside chat we've actually had so far, in my opinion. I definitely would say that that's one of the biggest strengths of this episode, the fireside chat. It also was probably the shortest episode overall. But this was because they spent a lot of time with the fireside chat, which to me, like, I'm not going to complain. Like, I actually was happy about that, because what they talk about in the fireside chat was actually really entertaining and enjoyable. So I love to hear your opinions. Did you guys enjoy this episode? Please remember to like, comment, subscribe. Tell me what you guys think. I'll have some questions below. Please remember to like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you guys next video. Guys, I'm Crazy Sarah 71, and goodbye, guys.